Hello, I'm Commissioner Charlotte Garrido. South Kitsap's Harper community has a unique history. In this video, you will hear from 4 longtime Harper residents about their own memories of the area. I'd like to say a special thank you to Whitney Bowler and Curtis Keat for producing this wonderful video that many generations will be able to enjoy. I'd also like to thank Bob Brinton, Cynthia Mora, and Chuck and Arnie Hauer for allowing us to interview them. This has been a tremendously fun experience. I hope you enjoy the video as much as I do.
America has gone through major changes over the past century. Changes in technology, landscape, and changes in society.
One particular area in Port Arthur, Washington has a big piece of history, mostly forgotten about, until now.
Hello, my name is Curtis Keats.
And I'm Whitney Bowler.
The two of us, along with a few community volunteers and members of Kitsap County governments, have been exploring the history of the Harper area.
The accounts you're about to hear are 4 longtime community members of the Harper area. Through
their accounts and the accounts of their ancestors, we've managed to uncover the secrets of Harper's past.
Well, that's a little too dramatic, but there has been a bit of history in the air. But here are the different perspectives of what Harper used to be like. Harper is a beautiful little town between Southworth and Manchester, Washington. The town was named after Fred Harper.
Fred Harper had a thriving business that put the town on the map and brought success.
It's named after the guy that started the brick company. If you go across the way and take a picture of that sign over there, you'll see the whole story is laid out on that plaque over there.
He put up the money to start the brickyard. He's the one that actually acquired the land from the county.
The brick factory is what brought many families to Harper. From the late 1800s to 1930, the brick house was the industrial job of the town.
A high percentage of the people in the area worked at the brickyard.
It's my great-grandfather, Ole Rodstall, and he worked there from 1909 or 1910 when he first settled here until it closed down.
The bricks were loaded onto scows and small tugboats owned by Charles Cornell. They came under the bridge at high tide and towed the loaded barges.
The brick factory was eventually shut down, and the only remains of it lie in the Harper estuary. But the brick factory is just a small part of Harper's history. Many generations, for many reasons, grew up in Harper.
It was the middle of the Depression, and things probably weren't going all that great up in the San Juan Islands, and I think, and I've never really pinned down that story, but my father came over here looking to keep from starving during the Depression and got a job in the brick company. And then shortly thereafter, the brick company went out of business.
My great-grandfather, Ole Rodstall, came from Norway through Quebec via North Dakota and then landed here in Harper because 2 of his brothers had previously come to the area, I think just to the Kitsap area. And then my great-grandmother, Pernilla, she joined him with my grandmother, Margaret, who was 9, and then her 2 younger brothers, Olaf and Oswald, all born in Norway, followed him then, and they landed here in Harper. And they had bought a home or a piece of land behind the brickyard in Harper. And their neighbors were the Newells, is one family name that I remember. And they lived there for several years until the house burnt down. Grabbed the kids and fled, lost everything except the family. And so then they bought this property. There's 10 square acres here. And it's been in my family since 1916. I'm the 4th generation to live here. And really happy about that. It's never left the family.
My uncle, his name was Bruce Brinton, he ended up getting a job offer at the Jensen's boat building. He just liked it over here, you know, slower pace, away from the city.
Many people stuck around the Harper area because of work. but some stayed for the small, close-knit community feel.
It's interesting what a few years will make in the difference the way people perceive things. Like I had one cousin who, he just died a year ago. He was 8 years older than I am. And his remembrances was coming over here and visiting the Howard family before the Howard boys had all gotten married. The Howard boys were out goofing off like young men do, and in these family gatherings. But by the time I came along 8 years later, I didn't see any of that. The boys had all gotten married and they split and went here and there, and their daughters were all married and gone. So my memories of life growing up on that hill are very tranquil. There wasn't any intranquility. My mom and dad never argued, and so it was a good life.
There were maybe 10 houses between the Harper Dock and the Brickyard, including Harper Hill, and so it's just a much smaller community. The neighbor down the road had a relative who needed a job, and my father knew somebody who needed somebody to work, and so that all worked, and the guy got a job. Well, the neighbor then showed up later and said, and he was a builder, he said, I really appreciate your finding a job for this guy. I want to do something for you in return. I want to build you a deck. So that's when the original deck got built. But that's kind of the way the neighborhood was. And if we had cherries and somebody else had apples, and everything was, you kind of shared stuff around, and from my perspective, it's a pretty good place to grow up.
Uncle Oswald, Uncle Leonard, the twins, Henry and Harry, all went to World War II. They took off at the same time. So I can imagine that was a great hardship on my great-grandmother. And so at that time, my grandmother Margaret, her husband Charles, my aunts Evelyn, Lawrence, and then my other aunt Rose Wood, and my father Paul Westland moved back here to the farm to help great-grandma keep things going. And so another family unit moved in, another generation helped keep it going and help it survive.
There are some parts of Harper that are still here today, like many of the houses, but many major landmarks have disappeared. The brick factory, the Harper Pier, there was even a school here.
Actually, we went to school in the early, now you and I went up to the old Harper school up here.
I went first, second grade.
Yeah, and your sister, our cousin.
Harper South was a great school. We had 4 grades in one room, 4 grades in another room, 1 grade in each row. So if you were in the first grade, you could sit and listen to what the 4th graders were learning. Then, of course, the old teacher was Miss Jones, a little hard-assed little old gal,
After they left Harper and there was no further education for them to go into town or transportation, they would go to Vashon Island, and they were called the Outsiders by the Vashon Island kids. And so the Vashon Island kids didn't want them to play on their baseball team. And so the Harper kids created their own baseball team and challenged Vashon to a baseball game, and I guess they beat them pretty bad. And so they won their respect
Then they can
that
play
way.
from now on.
Yeah, I think that the kids really palled around together, and I'm sure they had great stories.
So now you know a little piece of history. While most of the evidence of this once prosperous town has been destroyed, we've uncovered something even more special: memories.
You may not be able to see the places like the brick factory or the pier, and the sights you see now aren't as they were a century ago.
But maybe now when you see this place, you can imagine what it was like.
And appreciate its rich history.